All right. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are. Thank you for coming today. My name is Brian Dar, and I am a solutions architect, safe program consultant, and according to Atlassian, an Atlassian certified expert. And you are here, hopefully, for a webinar that is officially called Portfolio Management with Atlassian Tools. And this is the first iteration of this where we're actually expanding it far out. Not just talking about the Atlassian-based tools, but also about other Atlassian ecosystem tools such as Structure, BigPicture, and various Microsoft project connectors. So if you've seen this webinar before, we're going to dive in a whole lot more into the ecosystem of this. We're going to do a little less tools dive, but it's going to be a lot more broader information for how you can manage project and portfolio management within the Atlassian ecosystem. Doesn't matter if you're waterfall or hybrid or agile, these tools will help you. And so hopefully you will find this, webinar of good use of your time. We're not really sure how long it's going to go, but it will be over within an hour. Also, this webinar, we're trying something new, and we're going to be giving out some sunglasses. We have some Ray-Bans that are branded. Somebody kindly left these on my desk, and it even comes with a case. So if you're sticking around, this is not a shameless ploy to get you to stick around until the end of the webinar, by the way. We just want to try out swag giveaways more. So, but you do have to stick around though to get it. But basically, we're going to tell you the names that are chosen, and there they are. Very fancy. They got a little XBM logo. I think they're pretty cool. So if you stick around, we're going to be giving some of those away too. All right, let me check my notes to make sure I've covered what needs to be covered. Fantastic. All right, here we go. So the agenda for today. This is the introduction right now, and we're going to talk about desired outcomes of PPM tools. So hopefully you'll hear those and go, yeah, that's me, and I'm really struggling with that, or my company's struggling with that. I'm going to show you a bunch of tool options, and then I'm going to dive into each of those tools. Let's say at a shallow to medium level, enough to give you a really good idea of which tools you should be heading towards. Then we're going to talk about some Microsoft Project Connector options, because some of you are going to be in a situation where you can't get away from Microsoft Project, and that is totally okay. Then we're going to talk briefly about Jira Align, and then we're going to conclude with this giveaway. I'm going to tell you some more about XBM in case you need help with any of this. But thanks for being here. We're happy to have you. All right, so let's talk about benefits of PPM tools. Obviously, the Atlassian ecosystem is really great for tracking work, and it's really great for teams. And what I think a lot of people don't know is that it's also great for layers above teams. We can actually roll things up to quarterly deliverables, and then yearly deliverables, and initiatives and strategies and all these things. So speaking to that, our first point of our desired outcome from these tools is we want to align our work to enterprise strategy. If you're using Jira and thinking, gosh, how do I tie the team's work to this multi-year initiative? This is how we're going to do it. We want to visualize capacity versus demand. This is extremely important to a lot of people, agile or not. We want to get a clear concept of where our dependencies are, and also enable us to have dependency conversations so that we're not missing things, and that we're sequencing things appropriately, and that we're timing things out okay. We want to get predictable and prioritize delivery of value. I know a lot of our clients come to us initially struggling with their teams not knowing what has the highest priority. And so by implementing a system, a project portfolio management system that has prioritized deliverables throughout the company, that's extremely helpful for everybody. Everyone likes knowing that they're working on the right thing. Stakeholder and team visibility. Jira is really good at that already, but we want to elevate that up to the enterprise level with roadmaps around clients or roadmaps around products. We want to reduce fire drills. I think all of that kind of rolls into reducing fire drills. Nobody likes that. And lastly, risk mitigation is also incredibly important. I think it's also important to call out the way that people work and plan can be quite different from enterprise to enterprise. Like I mentioned briefly, some are purely agile, some are purely waterfall, but we're seeing a lot of hybrid planning and delivery configurations among our clients now. And by adding the tools or the connectors that we're going to talk about today to your tool stack, you can keep your planning and delivery connected no matter what the environment is that you're working in. All right. So let's talk about implementation briefly. Oh, no, we're going to go back. All right. So implementation. All the tools that we're going to talk about, and we will be doing live demos in a few minutes. All of these are, I think, at the end of a chain of people, process, and tools. I think it's really important that you hire the right people to begin with. If you don't hire the right people, process and tools isn't going to save you. But I think what people forget about is that the next step is usually process. We want to have analog or digital, it doesn't matter. We want to have a process that works for our business. And then we want to implement the tools that help provide guardrails around that process and also support and automate that process and provide transparency and everything. But if the process is bad, the tools are just going to reinforce a bad process. Assuming your processes are already optimized, we're going to talk about the tools today. But in many cases, I want to point out that implementing these tools does not mean moving your team's collective cheese. It's really important to remember that. I think people are super scared when a new tool or process comes in. We are always pro standardization for both training purposes and cross-team synergies and moving people across teams, and also allowing so anyway, standardization we think is very important, but we also want to allow our teams to do what they do best with the processes that work for them. So in general, we don't really prescribe standardization at the team layer, although again, it's very helpful if you can get there. But really starting at the Jira Epic layer, at that program layer, at that team of teams layer. If we start standardizing there, that allows management to provide prioritized and estimated work to the teams in a consistent manner. The epics can then be tagged with customers and products to provide those roadmaps. And those can then tie up to higher level initiatives, allowing for company strategy and execution. It's also important to note that each of these tools, with the exception of Jira Align, can really be done with just a few teams to start with. This will allow you to solve emergent challenges and also provide that light on the hill that will attract everybody else, like moths to a flame, around your successful processes and tools. So I just want to point out that the implementation of this is really important, and the change management and the human piece of that implementation. But there are ways to do it without raising pitchforks from the villagers. In fact, we can get everyone to come along in a pretty happy way most of the time, which is really important, I think. All right, so let's talk about the tool options in order to do PPM within the Atlassian ecosystem. There are some apps. The first one is Advanced Roadmaps. That is, well, we're going to talk about it later. Then there's Structure and Structure.Gantt, as well as BigPicture and BigPicture Enterprise. There are some other apps in the ecosystem that provide Gantt charts. There's things like WBS Gantt and BigGantt, and those serve their own purposes. They are great tools, and we often consult on them. But in general, we see the ones listed here used much more. So we're going to talk about those today because there's only so much time in a webinar. We're also going to discuss two Microsoft project connectors, SEPTA Bridge and Fluent Pro Integration Hub. If you're in an environment that heavily uses Microsoft Project and you can't get away from it, that's okay. We can connect your planning and delivery with a few choices here. There's even other choices too. We've also built custom integrations for that as well. But those are two that are living out there in the ecosystem, ready to go. They just like all of the tools that we're going to talk about today, they each have their own advantages and disadvantages. All right, so we're going to start with advanced roadmaps. And basically, for all of these tools, I'm going to talk about an overview, including deployment and tool organization. Then we're going to go into the tool, and we're going to do a dive into the planning behavior and the resourcing behavior. And then we're going to talk about deciding factors as to why you might use this tool versus another one. So hopefully, this will be of great value to you. All right, so advanced roadmaps. Advanced roadmaps is a cross-project road mapping and visualization tool that also includes team-level capacity and limited auto-scheduling functionality. It comes native with Jira Cloud Premium and also Data Center. If you're on Jira Standard, you won't be able to get it at all. But if you're on Cloud Premium or Data Center, it comes in the box for free. And it's basically a series of plans. Each plan has its own definable scope and views and scenarios and permissions. But I really want to point out, I think a lot of people want this to be a Gantt. It is not a Gantt chart. It is a tool that takes Jira issues with dates, a start and an end date, and puts it on a roadmap in an alternate visualization, much like a Kanban board, in my opinion. A Kanban board takes data from Jira and just puts it up in a way that makes sense for a team. And in this situation, it puts that data up on a roadmap for you. All right, so now I'm gonna try to get over here and we're gonna hop in the tool. There we go, I'm gonna pull this out and go back to the slideshow. Yeah, all right, so we're gonna dive into tool navigation, planning, and resourcing. Also, by the way, there's gonna be plenty of time at the end for questions as well. So when you're in, and we're going to demo today in Jira Cloud Premium, you can find advanced roadmaps up here under plans, and then each of the plans that you've saved will appear here. And I'm just going to show you a quick advanced roadmaps demo. So let's talk about planning behavior first. What we have along the left side here is our scope area. This is akin to a work breakdown structure, WBS structure, in any other planning tool. And then we have all of our fields here as well that we can bring in. Basically, this is a bunch of Jira issues, and these Jira issues follow a hierarchy. And so initiatives break down into epics. And then depending on the view that I select and the way that I configure it, I can have those epics break down into stories, tasks, bugs, etc. I'm going to go back to the other view though here, which is the more important one for me. Oops, no, I just jumped out of that completely. All right, so the date behavior. The bars that you see over here on the right, these appear on the roadmap based on manually inputted start and end dates or roll-up dates from sprints. These are actually inheriting sprint dates here, which is why they're filling out an entire 2-week section. But the dates in general come from manually input dates or roll-ups. Parents can inherit their children's dates and also some values such as estimate roll-ups as well. With regard, and you can also drag them around as well. And then you can see that the parents move with the children if you decide to do parent roll-ups. Looking at dependency behavior, I would call these soft dependencies. These are all based on Jira links. And in this case, I've configured this to use the blocks and is blocked by link. Dates do not react to predecessor changes. So just to point out, again, this is why this is not a Gantt. If I move this predecessor out, you'll see that the successor stays right where it is. This is not a start to finish, start to start, end to end kind of connection. It's just a soft connection to tell me what's going on. Let's talk about sandboxes in planning. So there are scenarios up here. I've programmed 2 into this chart. And as you work across the scenarios and as you change data, you'll get colored flags that appear here. And those colored flags correspond to the scenario and they correspond to the commit changes button over here as well. So if I flip over to the worst case scenario that I'm going to call it, over here, my review changes as soon as I make a change. Let's just move that out. That's going to appear in red, and it's going to give me the choice of which changes to push back to Jira. Basically, anything in advanced roadmaps that you adjust is there in that sandbox. Sorry, just put a note for later. Estimation. When you build a plan, you can either estimate in story points or you can estimate in time tracking. Now, there's no way currently to do hybrid on one plan. So you have to choose, but you could use automation for Jira and a formula to automatically update issues with an estimated time if you want to. This might look a little gross to your developers, but we work with clients on that to make that conversion, but there's no native conversion. Let's talk about critical path, because that's really important to people. There is no critical path highlighting. Again, it's not a Gantt chart. But what you do get if you come to your views, and these are all savable views, by the way. Down here, these are standard views. And I've got a dependencies report that shows me all of my dependencies in a path. And I can group them by team. Let me use fit. There we go. So I can see that Alpha team has dependency on Charlie team, which then enables a bunch more of Alpha team's work. So we know that we really need to watch Alpha team's blocker here to enable Charlie team to re-enable Alpha team. I find this pretty helpful. All of the links that are out of whack show up in red, but again, it's not critical path. And also, if I move things, their successors won't move either. So just as a reminder, not a Gantt. Also, speaking of not a Gantt, there is no baselines in Jira. I'm sorry, in advanced roadmaps either. So if you're looking for a baseline, this is not the tool for you. There are tools later on today that we'll talk about though. And there's also no earliest or latest start function as well. Now, that's a lot of no's for this tool. Let's talk about some of the really great things about this tool. At least as far as visualization goes. One of the things I love is that, like I said, I can make all these different visualizations. So I've made an epic planning, initiative planning, capacity planning, and a WSGIF rapid entry view. And then for each of these views, I can filter work. I can choose what layer of the hierarchy I'm going to show. It's very WYSIWYG. It's very easy to use. And then I can change view settings. I can change the way that I color things, the way that I sort things. It's pretty great. And then what I can do is I can take one of these views, I can save it, and I can share these views out with other people, which is also quite helpful. One of the ways, well, here, let me just click share as and show you. There's like 5 different ways to do it now. One is a read-only link. So if I copy that and come to a new page, I get a read-only basis of that particular view. And someone can still come and modify this view as they want. They can expand. They can look at different fields. They can pull in new fields. But every time they come back to the saved view, it's going to reset. I can also embed in an iframe. I can also embed in a Confluence page, and that one's really powerful. So I love this just as an out-of-the-box visualization of what's going on. We can also do a CSV dump, and there's also now a PNG image saving as well for those of you that are still very PowerPoint driven. If you are PowerPoint driven, I can strongly recommend moving people into Confluence. Confluence has a, what do you call it now? It has a presenter mode, and if you can drop a live roadmap in Confluence and not have to worry about updating anything, it's just wonderful. I'm just a big fan of that. Let's talk about resourcing behavior for a minute. Depending on the view you construct. So for me, this one's called capacity planning. Same data, different view. I can choose teams for the work that they're doing. So in this case, I can see all of Alpha team, Beta team, and Charlie team. And the teams is just a field. And so I can change the work that this team is doing by choosing a different team. I'm sorry, yeah, I can choose the doer of the work by choosing a different team, and that'll move it to a different team. And each team has its own preset velocity. And each team can work in sprint or Kanban. And if I click on a given sprint, I can adjust that sprint or that weekly iterations velocity here. But just keep in mind, this is team level assignment. If you're agile, that is exactly what we want to be doing. We want cross-functional teams. The availability of those teams is actually controlled through their boards, through the working days feature of a Scrum board or a Kanban board. Capacity, again, is done through a team setting in the plan, and then also adjustable sprint by sprint. There is no skills function, also because this is team level capacity. So if you're needing really specific skilling per person, this is not the tool for you. There's also an auto schedule feature here. And so if I expand, let's say, alpha team's work, and you can see all of their work and their dependencies. If I click auto schedule, I can choose to save sprints, releases, or teams, or not. And it's going to run an algorithm. It's a pretty complex algorithm too. And it's going to make suggestions about where to move that work based on all kinds of inputs. Atlassian is working on making the auto scheduler more transparent as to why it's making its suggestions and what goes into the algorithm. But to be perfectly honest, right now, I find it too opaque to recommend auto scheduling at this time. It is certainly definitely not good for epics and above. It could be okay for a team level if you're doing really pure agile. I could see the auto scheduler working for that. But in general, just not a big fan. Let me move my notes here really quick. All right. Yeah, so that is advanced roadmaps in a nutshell. Let's come back to the slide deck and talk about deciding factors. And don't get me wrong, I love this tool. It is incredibly helpful for a number of teams, but it is not a Gantt, and it does not particularly well support Gantt-style waterfall planning if you're in a waterfall or a hybrid environment. But don't worry, we've got options for that coming up in a moment. All right, so what are the deciding factors? It's native with Jira. It's free. You can't beat free. It's not a Gantt, so if you need a Gantt, you're going to need a different tool. It's great for roadmaps. It does team level resourcing. The auto scheduler is a bit opaque. And there you go. Let's move on to Structure and Structure.Gantt. So Structure is an add-on that allows you to do a work breakdown structure within Jira, and you can define your own hierarchy, or you can follow Jira's native hierarchy, which is also configurable. And Structure itself, when you make that work breakdown structure, it's really powerful. You can bring in all the fields in Jira to show information in that structure, but you can also do calculated fields as well. And that's where I find Structure to be incredibly powerful. Once you have Structure, you can get a second app called Structure.Gantt, and that makes Structure a very robust Gantt chart add-on. I'm really happy with it. It is available for cloud and data center, and no matter what tier of cloud. Its tool organization is that the primary object is a Gantt, which is built from a structure. Each structure in Gantt has its own definable scope, hierarchy, views, scenarios, baselines, scheduling, and resourcing behavior. And something that I love about it is that you can do intra-Gantt scheduling behavior. In other words, you can do something they call a slice, where you can say, all right, for this bulk of work, treat scheduling like this and treat resourcing like this. But for this section of work, I want to treat it completely differently. And you can do all of that within the same Gantt, which I really appreciate. It also has quick filters, which are nice. So let's go look at the tool itself, and we're going to talk about planning behavior and resourcing behavior in the tool. All right, so in order to get to Structure, and again, this is cloud, but it exists for data center as well, we come to apps, and then we'll find Structure right here. Once you're in Structure, you can see on the left side, there's that work breakdown structure that I was talking about. So I've got the same initiatives that we were looking at before in advanced roadmaps that are broken down into epics, that are broken down into stories and tasks. I've got this lovely progress bar. And then I've got like a million things that I can add to this if I want to. including every field in Jira and also any formula that I want to construct myself, which is pretty amazing. Yeah, there we go. That button right there makes the whole thing worth it. Date behavior. This is a Gantt chart. So Structure automatically determines dates based on a number of things. So if you have a start date, if you have a work estimate, if you have a resource assigned and you have resource constraints, all of this rolls into where the dates are going to show up on the Gantt. Just like any other Gantt too, we can do the 4 standard Gantt types of connections. This is a finish to start connection. And as soon as it updates, this little guy is going to bump out. Yep, there we go. So if I move something, everything else is going to move in line. Well, and actually I can't because of the scheduling behavior here. So if I give it a manual schedule, I can set a new start date, and we can watch everything move out with it if we want to, and it'll push everything out forward with it. So exactly what you would expect from a Gantt. We can also do things like optional lag time, and we can change the kind. We can do finish to finish, start to start, start to finish. I haven't set those up yet in this demo though. Yeah, so really robust dependency behavior. Sandboxes. This is where Structure struggles a little bit. There are infinite sandboxes in data center. They do not exist yet in cloud. So in my opinion, if you need sandboxes, and I don't know who doesn't, because we don't want to do live changes when we're planning, Structure is not a good option for cloud right now. It is a fantastic option for data center. This is actually one of my favorite apps. Let's talk about estimation. You can estimate in story points. So basically within the Gantt configuration here, you can come and you can save different Gantt configurations. But when we come to scheduling, we can use time tracking, we can use a custom estimate, we can use a formula estimate if we want to. And like I said, we can do that per slice. So we can have this team estimating this way, this team estimating this way. Each of them, and of course, there's a conversion ratio in here because it's a Gantt chart and we have to show everything on a calendar, even though we're estimating in story points. There is there's an hours ratio here as well, and you can do that per team if you want to, or per groups of teams. So hopefully you're seeing that's really quite powerful. There is also critical path highlighting. You can see that right here. So once you start making those connections, you get the red box around the critical path, and we can turn that off. We can turn on and off progress and dependency views and warnings and all that other stuff too. There's also multiple baselines, so I can create as many baselines as I want as we progress through our project. Also, just like advanced roadmaps, there is no early start, early finish, late start, late finish constraints, unfortunately. They are working to get the sandbox parity into cloud though. So that is on their roadmap. I know they're trying very hard to get that coming out. I cannot wait for that to come out because then I'm going to keep recommending this to everybody. Also, just to show again, this is one of the only tools that takes work estimates into account as far as pushing out duration, which I really appreciate. This is the truest Gantt chart that I've seen. Something else you can do when you, well, okay, so that's scheduling. Let's talk about resourcing. If I turn on my Gantt and resource view, I can see everything down here. And as I zoom in or out, I can see the work happening across days based on the resources over here. It's just as you would expect. But one thing I can do is Structure allows for you to do team resourcing as well. You can choose the resourcing field, and you can choose how that field behaves. So if you want to do individual resourcing, we can base resourcing on the assignee field. And in that case, it's going to be a one-to-one setup. But we can also do it off of a team field if we wanted to instead, like there. And then we could determine how many team members are on that team. So we can do individual resourcing or team resourcing. Again, very powerful. Availability of those resources is handled through shared calendars with working hours and time zones, days, and holidays. Resources can also temporarily be assigned a percentage of reduced or expanded capacity. So we can come in here into the resource setting, and we can do the general availability and capacity percentage, and we can put them on a certain work calendar in a certain time zone. Capacity adjustments, we can set resource units as well as the work calendar per resource, like it showed. Tasks can also be set with a maximum unit, which I appreciate. So down here, max units. If you could only spend half your time working on this task at a max, we could do 0.5 max units, or we could do 3 max units, implying that 3 people can work on this task at the same time. There are no skills in this tool as well. So if you need that very, very granular skilling function, although I haven't tried this, but I would imagine that with slices, you could somewhat reproduce skill requirements, but there's no specific resourcing skills available. There is something called leveling though, where I can run a button that will run an algorithm that will push everything out and level the resources. It'll shift issues based on your chosen priority attribute, typically rank, but maybe not always. And it'll bring one or more resources to back to under 100%. Leveling has many options, including whether to move completed items or started items or manually scheduled items, and when to start leveling. You know, do we do it from December? Do we do it on forward? Unfortunately, that also is only available in the data center deployment of Structure and Structure.Gantt. Lastly, there is no cross-plan resource view. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So if you are on data center, I cannot recommend this enough. It is a great, great tool. If you're on cloud, well, here, let's go back to our slideshow and we'll actually talk about that. All right, so deciding factors. If you need granular behavior within a plan, team to team, this is a great way to go. If you need team and individual resourcing, great way. If you need multiple baselines, this is your tool. If you need durations based on estimates, this is your tool. If you just love structure and want to add a Gantt to it, fantastic. There's no skills. There is great resource leveling in sandboxes, but currently only available in DC data center. All right. Next, we're going to talk about BigPicture and BigPicture Enterprise. This one has more slides because there's just a lot going on there. So BigPicture has 4 different products relating to this world. One is called BigGantt, and that's just the Gantt chart piece. Then there's BigPicture, which brings in a bunch of other modules as well. So specifically, it brings in an Agile and program board. Oops, I should not be clicking there because I can't do that, but it'll bring in an Agile and program board. It brings in a risks unit. It brings in a roadmap module. It brings in advanced resource planning, which includes workload plans, holiday plans, and skills. It brings in teams and a calendar view and some extra additional fancy reporting functionality. So it's BigGantt with everything else that becomes BigPicture. However, if you're doing a lot of work and you want unlimited scenarios, if you want more than one private and one public scenario, which we'll explain in a minute, you're going to need an additional add-on called BigPicture Enterprise. So just like Structure, where you need Structure and Structure.Gantt, BigPicture, you will probably need BigPicture and BigPicture Enterprise. If this all sounds confusing, it is. Within this ecosystem. And so like a lot of times we will do short 2-day effort engagements to work with clients to find out what their needs are and help them pick the right tool. And that often, uncovers needs around processes and tool management and that kind of stuff. But hopefully this webinar is enough to get you going. But if you do need more help, we do these really tiny engagements. I love doing them. where we basically scope out tools for people, because there's just a lot going on with the interconnectedness here. You know, it might be that you just need WBS Gantt, in which case it's cheap and easy to set up, or it might be that you need BigPicture Enterprise based on your needs. But probably if you're doing BigPicture, you're going to need BigPicture Enterprise too. With BigPicture Enterprise, you get something called unlimited box types. I'm going to explain that in a minute. You get unlimited scenarios. You get a cross-box resource view, so you can see all the resourcing across everything. You can rename modules. You can integrate with tempo. You get data residency. That may be extremely important to you. And you get some advanced report modification. More about BigPicture, because it's pretty complex. The way that it is structured. It's structured in things called boxes. And a box is kind of like a plan or kind of like a Gantt. But each box has its own definable scope and hierarchy and ways to view things and scenarios and scheduling and resourcing behavior and quick filters. Each box can also bidirectionally sync with Trello cards too, which is pretty cool, especially if you're doing like, you know, product development over in Trello. Box types determine how the boxes relate to each other. And we're going to see this in the tool in a second. But you can decide what boxes or what box types can parent to what box types, and they can contain metadata that can be changed once a box is created. So in a way, a box type is kind of like an issue type, but also an issue template. I know this is a little complex, but some example box types are a portfolio or a program increment or an iteration or a project or a phase or an initiative. So let's actually make clarity of that mud and go into the tool and see what this looks like. So to get to BigPicture, I'm going to go to Apps and then BigPicture. And when I land in BigPicture, I'm going to see, let me collapse that. I'm going to see this home root structure. And home expands out into multiple boxes. Each of these is a box. And if I just expand this out and show you what I mean with nested boxes, let's say I have a hybrid portfolio. I'm partially waterfall and I'm partially agile. So here I can have a program that breaks out into program increments, that breaks out into iterations, and then this box pulls in all the work in a certain iteration. And then I can see it as a roll-up. Or I can have a classic project that has stages, and so that project can be broken out into stages. I'm going to demo off of something that's just everything thrown into one portfolio because I find that easier. If you like this kind of setup, again, each of these boxes can have its own administrators and its own resourcing behavior and its own scheduling behavior and its own views. That could be really useful if you have a very large enterprise that is each working differently, but you need to see a standard roll-up. That being said, you can recreate that same kind of setup also in Structure or in advanced roadmaps. You just have to structure Jira correctly. But let's hop into a demo portfolio to talk about tool organization. I'm sorry, to talk about planning and resourcing. So planning, just like everything else we've seen, we have our scope view over here on the left. We have our initiatives broken out into epics, broken out into stories and tasks and bugs. On the right side, we have our Gantt. Issues appear on the Gantt based on manually updated start and end dates, or auto-scheduled dates based on dependency links. So for example, if I do my standard Gantt finish to start dependency here, you see that piece of work get pushed out. This tool does not look at estimates in determining duration though. So that's something to keep in mind. If I click into it, notice that there's no concept of what that estimate is here. If I right click on it, I can reposition it, I can create a baseline, and this period mode is important. I can have a parent react to its children, or I can have children be constrained by a parent, depending on which of these I pick. So I would say that on your epics, maybe you want auto bottom up, but on your initiatives, you want auto top down. You can also do manual scheduling and locked scheduling as well. So there's quite a bit you can do there. But again, it doesn't adjust duration based on effort. Dependency behavior, just like a Gantt. One super cool thing though, and I'm I'm not gonna, there we go. Yeah, here it is. This tool combines structures, links, and advanced roadmaps links. And what I mean by that is you can have your 4 standard Gantt link types, start to start, finish to finish, finish to start, start to finish. But you can also do the soft links that the developers are using, like this issue blocks this issue. And if you turn on soft links, it will show you those as well, although not in here right now because I don't have a good example pulled up. But it'll show you those in a dashed view as well, which is quite helpful for seeing how humans are sequencing their work versus how the planners are sequencing their work. I guess it's just called planners, not human. That wasn't very nice. I did not mean that. How the people delivering the work are sequencing their work versus the people planning the work. All right, sandboxes. Yes, there are multiple sandboxes. We can, as long as we have BigPicture Enterprise, we can have one public, more than one and public and more than one private sandbox to play in. Estimation, you can bring in time tracking like we have here. You can bring in story points. There is an automatic conversion available between time tracking and story points, but you can only configure that per box, which is a little frustrating. And you can't base a box off of, well, don't let me misspeak on that. We'll figure that out later. But you can only do one per box. So you would need a box effectively per team if every team had a different thing, had a different ratio. Critical path highlighting, yes, that is available in this tool. It is a Gantt, although for the life of me, I'm not going to find it quickly. It's here, I swear. Oh, there it is, visibility, critical path, there. Sorry, keeping track of multiple tools is not super easy. Baselines, you can set a baseline for the entire Gantt or per issue, but you can only have one baseline per issue at any given time. Basically, it saves it to a Jira field, to a Jira date field. And so if you want multiple baselines, you're going to go with structure instead. Just like structure and advanced roadmaps, there is no early start, early finish, late start, or late finish constraints. Resourcing behavior. When you do resources in this view, let's, oh my gosh, this is killing me. View, show me resources. Oh, the people, there we go. So when you do resources, you can see people at capacity down here, just like structure. Unlike structure, resourcing is just individual assignment in BigPicture. Availability is done through shared workload plans, holiday plans, and individual absence adjustments. You can also do individual capacity adjustments through shared workload plans and apply them specifically to an individual. BigPicture does have skills, which is a really big thing for a lot of people. So you can assign a skill to a certain piece of work. And so for example, if I go and find a piece of work over here, there's going to be this BigPicture skills field here. And if I open that up, I can add a particular skill like developer, and then it's going to do this find a perfect match item too. So it's going to find somebody available for that developer. That's a pretty sexy feature if you like that kind of granular planning. There is no resource leveling, unlike structure, but there is something called resource contouring, where you can front load or back load effort within the time frame of the work to be done. But there is a cross-plan resource view, which is quite helpful. So if you are doing these boxes for each individual business unit, you can do an overall cross-plan view if you have BigPicture Enterprise. So what are the deciding factors on BigPicture? First of all, it is multiple tools in one. You get risk, program boards, calendars, and a Gantt. You get cross-plan resource views if that's important to you. You get skills. You get resource contouring. There's no resource leveling though. And there are something to note, there is limited configuration differentiation within a box. Basically, you can configure something by Jira project. But it's a big, sexy tool. All right, that's the end of the live demos. Let's talk about the rest of this. Microsoft Project Connectors. For many companies, the work done in Microsoft Project could be moved to Jira. That being said, If you're in a position, if your company or your project managers are not in a position to stop using Microsoft Project, and I understand that it is a very beloved tool. Or for example, if you absolutely require early start, early finish, late start, late finish constraints, then a Microsoft Project connector might be an option. There are two primary ones on the market, SEPTA Bridge and Fluent Pro Integration Hub. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. I don't really have enough time to dive completely into those today, but you know, some of them work through a web interface. One of them has to be always running on a machine because it actually serves as the interface connector. Some of them have parent link and some don't. So it's usually a much more nuanced kind of consulting around that, where we look at the way people are planning, the way they're delivering, and we try to connect everything. In general, I'd say if you can get in the same tool, by all means, obviously get in the same tool. But if you can't, these connectors could be very, very helpful. There is another tool out there that you might have heard of called Jira Align. And Jira Align is a massive, really cool tool that is for enterprises that are doing scaled agile. It works particularly well if you're doing SAFe, Scaled Agile Framework, but it's also quite good if you're doing like LESS or Spotify model, that kind of stuff. It works via a Jira connector, so it sits on top of Jira. The thing about Jira Align is, unlike the rest of these tools where we can implement them just with, you know, a couple of what do you say? A couple of weeks and just, you know, small team configuration. This takes 3 months because it is a massive implementation. We can configure the tool in a day. It takes 3 months to get all the people into the tool and using it correctly. But it is a major tool. It's one of Atlassian's flagship products. Here's some images about the way it works. And by the way, we have a webinar coming up, I think coming up. You'll see it on our last slide. That is a deep dive into this tool. If you think that you are a SAFe or Scaled Agile Framework enterprise that wants to look into this tool. But basically, it's, you know, Jira Align. It sits on top of Jira, and it covers all layers of the enterprise. Team layer stays in Jira, program layer stays in Jira Align, solution layer, portfolio layer, enterprise layer. And another way to look at it is that there's actually multiple hierarchies in that tool that all connects back down to Jira. There's the people hierarchy, there's the work breakdown hierarchy, and there's the time hierarchy of program increments, of multiple year strategies broken into program increments, broken into iteration cycles. It even supports business vectors like product tagging, OKRs, value streams, domains, and budgets. It's a massive tool. I highly recommend checking out the webinar that really deep dives into that coming up. Major features of Jira Align that you might be interested in: roadmaps, OKRs, a program board, program portfolio and strategy rooms to help those teams focus on the work they need to focus on. And Jira Align does some pretty advanced dependency management as well. All right, I'm going to talk briefly about us, and then we're going to give away some sunglasses. So thank you for your kind attention, first of all. I know this is a lot of information. It's a bit like drinking from a fire hose. If you want more information, we have a lot of webinars coming up that I'm going to show you in a moment. But we do everything around this Atlassian ecosystem. We're a platinum solution partner, which means we're the top tier of Atlassian partners. We do training like these free webinars. We do public classes. We do private classes. If you want to get trained on something or want to train your team on something, we can do it. We do consulting, obviously around tools like this and processes and implementations and, you know, strategic portfolio management and Jira Align implementations. And then we also have a custom development shop. So if we can't find it in the marketplace and we can't configure it in the tool, we can build it for you. We have a lot of geniuses floating around there. And speaking of all those webinars, yeah, there we go. Introduction to Jira Align, December 1st. So if you want to see more about that, We have a Jira Bootcamp, a Confluence Bootcamp, Introduction to Confluence, Agile Foundations Bootcamp. That's a really great one. If you're into Jira Work Management or cloud migrations, if you want to learn about Jira Service Management or Jira Service Management for ITSM, or if you want to do a 2-day intensive training on it, I mean, anything you want. So before we get to the Q&A, let's give away some sunglasses. The very first winner, and by the way, the way to win, there we go. Elizabeth is posting it right now. I'm not going to say this name right, but the person in chat, Jyotsna Morla, congratulations. You were the first person to our webinar today, so you won. Basically, if you want to get your free Ray-Bans, you're going to need to send your email address here to elizabeth.wheeler. Oh, I don't think that's going to everybody. I need that to go to everybody. There we go. Oh, you know what? Elizabeth, you're going to need to post that email because I can't send it to everybody for some reason. Anyway, elizabeth.wheeler@xpm.com. Thank you. And that's how you're going to win. We have a second winner as well, Olayemi Abati. I'm so sorry about your name pronunciation with my very North American centric pronunciation. And then we have 3 more winners. Pratik Gupta, Arthur Marble, and Pascal Fredet. Elizabeth's dropping those names in here as well. So thank you for sticking around. We hope that you enjoy these fancy sunglasses. And now we're going to get to the Q&A. Well, actually, before I answer the questions, I just want to do a soft close because maybe you don't care about questions and answers. So before I get there, I want to say thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your kind attention. We really hope that you found this webinar to be of value. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, brian.dar@xteam.com. You can stalk me on LinkedIn if you want. We're always happy to hop on the phone and chat about all of this wonderful world of project management. All right, so questions. Is there a way that we can use a version on our own instead of using a client portal so that we can use it as a sandbox and play around with it without having to go into a real live portal, which is risky? Yeah, so all of these tools support sandboxing. And so the idea is that you get in, you build a sandbox, you make all the changes you want, you confirm the plan with your management, and then when everyone agrees, you click push, and then everything rolls back into Jira. Advanced Roadmaps and BigPicture do that in the cloud right now. Structure will do that in the cloud soon. All 3 of them do it in Data Center. What kind of dashboards can we create so that we can view them on PowerPoint slides? Each of these tools has a different way of exporting. In my opinion, Advanced Roadmaps is probably the best, but Structure and BigPicture both have exports, but they're more in the form of CSV exports, unfortunately. So if you're road mapping, you can actually use these tools in combination as well. You can do your hybrid planning within Structure and BigPicture. You can then push those changes to Jira, and that means that the advanced roadmap will automatically update as well, and that can be embedded in your Confluence pages. So there's kind of ways to make all this work together. Otherwise, a screenshot can be your best friend, as well as a full page screenshot add-on. There's also gadgets that you can drop into Confluence. I guess they're called macros in Confluence for each of these as well. So you can have a Structure macro in Confluence, or you can have a BigPicture macro in Confluence. And then there's a question about baselines set at story level. Yes, all of these tools do baselines at story level, but you can also do them at basically any level of the hierarchy. And that's the end of the questions that I see stacked up. Are there any more questions? I'll wait just a minute because I know it takes a little while to type. All right. Well, I hope you got a lot of value out of this. Thank you so much for coming. Enjoy the sunglasses to whoever won, and we'll be emailing Elizabeth. Thank you again for attending, and we hope to see you at our next webinar. Have a great day, everyone.